Hello, this is Kate, and this is a mini tarot card reading lesson. And today's lesson will be on how to do a tarot reading where you make your cards relate to one another. Because I think it's easy when you're doing a reading, for yourself or for someone else, to want to interpret each card individually, but it can sometimes be hard to see how the cards can relate to one another. So I just want to give you some kind of tips and pointers on how you can do this, because this will help you make your reading more, I guess I want to say more whole or more integrative, and it will just be much more meaningful and make a whole lot more sense. Okay, so we've got the first card, and it really depends on what spread you're using on how you're going to interpret your cards and how your cards are going to relate. So I'm going to first demonstrate this with a very simple past, present, future spread. So our first card is Eight of Cups. So, first you'd interpret this card based on its placement, so in the past position. And then the card of the present is Nine of Swords. So the first thing that you want to do is look for similarities between these two cards. So what stands out as a similarity for you here? What I notice is that the two figures are both hiding their face. So the first card, he's turning away, and the second one, his face is in his hands. And so that's the main similarity I see, and the attitude is somewhat similar. I feel that the attitude of the figure in both the cards seems to be a refusal. So a refusal to look at something, or a refusal to kind of deal with something. So it seems like kind of a refusal of some sort, not wanting to see something. So that's the first step, is kind of looking for similarities. And then you can compare and contrast, so look for ways that they're different as well. So in this case, I see these cards as being very, very similar. But if they were different, you would kind of contrast them. And then another technique is dialoguing with your cards. So having the two cards dialogue with each other. And this works particularly good if your cards have pictures of people in them. It's a little bit more challenging if it's, say, like Ace of Cups and there's just a cup. It's hard to kind of dialogue with that. But if you can imagine these two figures having a conversation or having some kind of dialogue, what do you think they would say? Or how do you think that they would respond to each other? When I look at this, I don't see them having a dialogue, because both of them are kind of turned away. They don't seem very communicative to me. So I see that there's not much of a dialogue going on here. So it's almost like a, in a sense, the card of the present seems to be refusing the card of the past, so refusing to look at the past or deal with the past. And then the card of the past seems to be a refusal to deal with what's going on there. So some kind of situation happening. Okay, and then, okay, so we've compared and contrasted them, we've looked for similarities, we've done the dialoguing, and so now I'm going to move on to the third card. Okay, and the card of the future is Queen of Cups. And so right away, when I turn this card over, I notice that the energy is different with this card as opposed to these two. So I notice a real shift in the energy right here. And because this card is so different from these two, you're going to want to kind of contrast the two and see what's different. So when I look at Queen of Cups, I see a card that is confident, powerful, someone who's in touch with their intuition and their emotions, and someone who's very sensitive. And so it's similar, I think, especially to this card, in that I see a sensitive person here. So someone who's maybe, having a hard time dealing with things and is feeling quite raw, quite sensitive. So that's how I see these two as being similar. I see them as being different in that this is a much more empowered card. So someone who, listens to their intuition and uses their emotions and their feelings as a way to grow and learn and ascend, basically, rather than getting kind of lost in the strong emotions as this card is doing. And also, because this is a card of the future, you can ask yourself what needs to happen in the present in this card in order to make that energy shift into the Queen of Cups. So you could look for ways to do that. When I look at the Nine of Swords, it's, Swords is a very mental card. It's all about, thought, thinking, worry, analyzing, stuff like that. And I often will interpret this card as meaning kind of being imprisoned by your negative thinking, or being imprisoned by that tendency to overanalyze and overthink things. And sometimes we can kind of go on that downward spiral where we'll think one negative thought, it will lead to another, and then another and another. And before we know it, we're kind of spiraling downward into this kind of pit of anxiety and emotion. And I see these swords as representing a ladder out of that. So finding a way to kind of catch yourself and becoming aware of what's going on, and being able to kind of step out of the mind and move up and go away from that kind of low level thinking. And I see that as being a way to connect these two cards. So a way to get to this more confident, empowered state is to, gain a certain amount of awareness to be able to climb out of that downward spiral of negative, worried thinking. And another way we can relate these two cards is once again doing the dialogue exercise with the Queen of Cups and then the card of the present. So if these two cards were to make contact, what would the figure in the present say to the Queen of Cups? So would that figure ask for advice? Would they, release would they verbalize all their worries and all their agonies? And what kind of advice would the Queen of Cups give to the Nine of Swords? So the Queen of Cups is kind of this powerful, empowered figure from the future. And what kind of advice would this person from the future give this person from the present? So that's another way that you can connect the two cards. And then another thing also that you could do, because this is a past, present, and future spread, you can see each card kind of leads to the next one. So once again, if you're dealing with this issue in the present moment, what can be done about the past in order to set this person free? So clearly something that's happened in the past has contributed to this feeling of stress and anxiety. So what was it in the past that wasn't dealt with that's contributing to that? And what can the person do in the present moment that would help them let that go in the past? So that's another way that you can connect the two. So I hope you found this helpful, and thank you so much for joining me.